Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill LeMay. It's the Bill LeMay. It's the Bill LeMay Show.
Deja vu. This time you'll be able to hear me. How are you? Good afternoon. Happy Monday and all of that. It is a pleasure and honor always to be with Big League Politics and have this program aired throughout the country. And, of course, having you spend a little time with us is indeed an honor. Welcome aboard. Some big news today. Of course, you had the embassy opening in Jerusalem, which a lot of folks are pretty excited about. And Donald Trump had some wonderful things to say. You know, we're going to get into that and a whole lot more, including spy stuff, very scary stuff. So on this Monday, May 14th, 2018, welcome aboard.
3.
Let's start with the spy stuff. And this is quite interesting. A lot of things have happened in the Mueller investigation. A lot of it is pretty convoluted. You have to keep a scorecard, and I think we're going to have to get a chalkboard or something so that we can identify the people for you. But in essence, in a very short version, you have spies, a mole within the president's campaign. That, ladies and gentlemen, only happens in a banana republic or under Barack Obama. I mean, pray that this story isn't true. Also, you have Grassley coming out and calling James Comey a liar. Well, that's not a surprise because clearly he is. And you have a young man who was set up by, it appears, the CIA and Russia with false information so that the Mueller investigation could continue its witch hunt. Pretty damning stuff. And it's all happening under a progressive Democratic president. Let us pray it never happens again. I mean, a progressive Democratic government.
2.
Guns are back in the news, strangely enough. I mean, we had the big wave, of course, with the Florida shooting. And, of course, David Hogg has kind of faded away. But now we have a shooting in Australia, and that has brought it back up to the surface. A lot of people have been talking about it, including there's a Democratic candidate in California. Wait till you see this ad. I'll tell you what, it gets right to the point. And honestly, I didn't think you could say this on broadcast over the airwave type television stations. But it'll set the platform for us. And Donald Trump warned us just last week about what's to come with the Second Amendment. And we'll fill in the blanks for you. And, of course, the big news is the embassy opening in Jerusalem. And it was remarkable. It truly is. I feel this has been a long time coming. Of course, as you know, I think it was 96 that both Democrats and Republicans joined together in a very bipartisan way and issued and passed legislation that gave the president the authority to open up its embassy, strangely enough, in the actual capital of Jerusalem. You know, where Israel actually has its capital and all its, you know, it's kind of like Washington, D.C. for Israel. It makes sense we were there. Of course, we've been tiptoeing right along about not hurting feelings. We have progressive universities that have, I think, changed the whole talking point on Israel, and now they're the bad guys, the Palestinians are the victims, and without getting into the whole history of it, the mainstream media going crazy over this, and Democratic pundits who feel that this is going to take us to the brink of nuclear war. Yes, we've heard that before. Well, let's take a look at Ivanka Trump and Mnuchin. They were outside the embassy in Jerusalem. This is very cool.
On behalf of the 45th President of the United States of America, we welcome you officially and for the first time to the Embassy of the United States here in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. Thank you.
This is some big stuff. It really is. And the people of Jerusalem, of course, are going crazy. The soccer team there changed their name for a day to Trump. And it was a glorious day in Israel. Of course, there was violence, of course, as there's always violence in the Gaza Strip, which we'll get to. But Donald Trump, pretty pleased with this. You know, he made a campaign promise, and he seems to be one of those presidents, few in number, by the way, who actually keep their campaign promises, and he does it in record time. Check this out.
Today, Jerusalem is the seat of Israel's government. It is the home of the Israeli legislature and the Israeli Supreme Court. and Israel's prime minister and president. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Yet for many years we failed to acknowledge the obvious, the plain reality that Israel's capital is Jerusalem. On December 6, 2017, at my direction, the United States finally and officially recognized Jerusalem as the true capital of Israel. Today we follow through on this recognition and open our embassy in the historic and sacred land of Jerusalem. And we're opening it many, many years ahead of schedule. As I said in December, our greatest hope is for peace. The United States remains fully committed to facilitating a lasting peace agreement, and we continue to support the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including at the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. This city and its entire nation is a testament to the unbreakable spirit of the Jewish people. The United States will always be a great friend of Israel and a partner in the cause of freedom and peace.
How do you not love this guy? I mean, he's taken a much different tactic than all his predecessors. You know, he walked away from a just awful deal that Barack Obama cut with the Iranians. Of course, Barack Obama walked away from the Israelis early in his administration. For some reason, the Democrats and Barack Obama, they don't like Jewish people or the Jewish state. That seemed very, very clear. Now, on the other hand, Donald Trump does. He truly, truly does. And I think what you heard there was has to be, for the people of Israel, so reassuring because, quite honestly, they were on the outs under Barack Obama, and I'm not certain that Barack Obama would have raised a hand if, in fact, people like Iran and others, as in the past, attacked Israel. I just didn't get a sense that Barack Obama had much to say or care about Israel. This is a much different situation now. By the way, having said that, no Democrats, none, came to this event. Joe Lieberman was there. Of course, he was a Democrat until they threw him out. No one. So I don't know. Why? Why? I mean, is it because they don't like Jewish people? Or they just simply are infantile and hate Donald Trump to the point where they're not going to give him any kind of a moment? Now, I don't know how this is going to turn out, right? Who knows? But it is a much different tactic, and we can get into that as far as negotiating peace. But this was long overdue. I will tell you this, too. The European Union, not everybody, but there was 5, 6 countries that wanted to embarrass Donald Trump today. And the European bloc of nations had a resolution that was precisely meant to embarrass him. And then you had 3 of the countries block that resolution. Interestingly enough, it was the French president who was just here kissing El Bato with President Trump, who moved forward on that. You had Ukraine, Hungary, and gosh, I forget the other one, who vetoed that, and they are probably going to move their embassy to Jerusalem as well. The progressive Europeans, they, like our Democratic counterparts here in this country, not big fans of Israel or the Jewish state. No, the ambassador, Ambassador Friedman, he's got to be pretty thrilled because this is a brand new embassy. How did he feel about it?
Again, the United States leads the way as the first nation to do so. So many have worked so hard and for so long for this day to come, and they all deserve our thanks. But make no mistake, today's historic event is attributed to the vision, the courage, and the moral clarity of one person to whom we owe an enormous and eternal debt of gratitude, President Donald J. Trump.
Well, I'm giggling because it's just moving. The guy never stops. You got a fake investigation that is starting to become exposed for what it really is. You have the media, you have Republicans, worse than the Democrats, going after him. Nothing stops this man. Bang, baby, bang. No Iran deal, all right? North Korea, hey, let's denuclearize the peninsula. And now this in Jerusalem, which shouldn't be a big deal at all. It's their damn capital. Of course, Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, has been in the Middle East and working very hard on behalf of Donald Trump in hopes of bringing the two sides together. He was there, of course, along with Ivanka, and he had comments. Listen.
I am so proud to be here today in Jerusalem, the eternal heart of the Jewish people. And I am especially honored to be here today as a representative of the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Trump's loved in Israel, there's no question about it. Now, Jared is leading the way when it comes to the peace negotiations there. You know, it's interesting that there was, in fact, an Obama advisor who has come out and spoken quite clearly about what has taken place here, while others have condemned it as being a very harsh, in-your-face move on the part of an arrogant president and will only cause problems. He has stated that, in fact, this could very well bring peace. Isn't that something? And boy, it's going to be hard to deny Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize if, in fact, that does happen. Kushner had more to say.
While presidents before him have backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. But today also demonstrates American leadership. By moving our embassy to Jerusalem, we have shown the world once again that the United States can be trusted. We stand with our friends and our allies, and above all else, we've shown that the United States of America will do what's right, and so we have.
Yeah, and I think that's important. As I said before, you had 8 years of a progressive administration under Barack Obama who really mistreated, abused, embarrassed, and I think put the relationship that the Israeli state had with the United States, it made it very obvious they had nothing to do with Israel, and they focused very much, and oftentimes had commented on whose side is he on, as he paid a great deal of attention to states that really wanted to destroy the state of Israel. The Democrats, as I mentioned again today, nowhere to be seen. This should be something that I think should be celebrated. Of course, the boo birds are out and the sky is falling, as it has been every day since Donald Trump was elected president. Kushner talks about standing with Israel, and it's the right thing to do. Here's more of what he had to say.
The United States stands with Israel because we both believe in freedom. We stand together because we both believe in human rights. We stand together because we believe democracy is worth defending. And the United States stands with Israel because we know that it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's not easy doing the right thing. It really isn't. And unfortunately for a lot of folks, they don't see what the right thing is to do. They have a much different, distorted view of reality, as you know. We see that every day here in the United States as we have been transformed into something that resembles more like Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. I mean, what people believe today about who we are, what we are, where we've come from, and especially the hate of a particular idea and the ability on the part of not only the party, in this case the Socialist Democratic Party, but the media itself, to try to do whatever it can, and the government, we'll get into that in a minute with Mueller, to silence individuals who have a different perspective on reality, a different opinion on how to get there. It's phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. And the problem they have is that Donald Trump doesn't care. He has not been taken out yet. Despite the deep state in the media and the Democrat and Republicans who have tried to do it, he's still standing. And he continues to prove them wrong. Prove them wrong. He's making the right decisions. And he's doing it alone. Well, and your support, of course, helps a great deal, I'm sure. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about what's happening in Israel. Netanyahu also had some things to say, and there was also the clash in the Gaza Strip, and we'll get to that because I believe for now the death toll's 58. We'll come back. 1 minute. Don't you go anywhere.
Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May Show.
Well, we've been talking about Jerusalem and, of course, the capital city. And there is violence in the Gaza Strip. There always seems to be violence in the Gaza Strip. You have the Iran deal, of course, that Donald Trump said, not going to do that. The reason I'm bringing this up is all of those kinds of events can have an impact on your 401k or IRA, right? Whether it's the government itself debasing your money or devaluing it, or the stock market, it's a scary time. And if you can protect yourself, and by the way, you can, it's called a precious metal IRA. Yeah, I mean, you have an IRA, you have a 401k. How about a precious metal IRA? Well, Birch Gold can do that for you. They're phenomenal. In fact, all you do is ask around. That's how I found them. They have a Better Business Bureau rating of an A+. No one does what they do. Their service, their personalized service, is second to none, and they're so educated. And I don't know about you, but I don't know much about precious metals. They do, and they're happy to share. In fact, you go ahead to the website and you get a 16-page booklet that tells you all about it, all that insider information to get you rocking and rolling. And they will take care of you as though you are the most important person in the world. And you know what? You really are. So do it today. You can do it right now. As a matter of fact, go to Birch Gold. Go to their website, bigleaguepolitics.com/birchgold. That's bigleaguepolitics.com/birchgold.
When there is peace in this region, we will look back upon this day and remember that the journey to peace started with a strong America recognizing the truth.
I think that's going to go a long way. I really do. I'm very hopeful and optimistic. Not a lot of people are on the left. They feel this is the end of it all. You know, it wasn't that long ago, and I think it was Clinton, actually, at Camp David, that they had Arafat there with the Palestinians and basically gave them everything they wanted, and they still walked away from it. So maybe this is a strategy that hasn't been tried before, where, you know what? Israel's our friend. We're going to move forward. We're going to protect them. We're planting our flag here. It's always been that way, but we are here. We want to have peace. If you'd like to have peace, let's talk about peace. We'll see if it works, but I'm optimistic. Now, of course, Netanyahu was ecstatic that the embassy was open.
Today, the embassy of the most powerful nation on earth, our greatest ally, the United States of America, today its embassy opened here.
Now imagine if you're living in Israel. That is a pretty big deal. It is the most powerful country on planet Earth, and they planted the flag. Now, they have said, do not mess with Israel. That's got to have an impact in the way people think in the Middle East. And fingers crossed, prayer, whatever. Maybe this will make the difference. It was David Brooks with the New York Times wrote a piece, and he was talking about Donald Trump and just how successful he's really been in dealing with folks who are bad actors, but are also heads of state. And he mentioned that maybe, just possibly, the fact that he had to deal with a lot of mob bosses in New York to get things done, maybe has prepared him for this. So maybe that is true. Now you also thanked, of course, Donald Trump.
Last December, President Trump became the first world leader to recognize Jerusalem as our capital. And today, the United States of America is opening its embassy right here in Jerusalem. Thank you, President Trump, for having the courage to keep your promises.
That's so key. It really is. And he does. He's remarkable. I know there are those who hate the man with a hate that I've not seen, but if you're somewhat rational, you've got to take a step back and go, how does this man keep going? And he has not taken a breath. He continues to move forward despite all the adversity. In fact, here's a list of some of President Trump's accomplishments. I mean, they're really quite phenomenal. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He left the Iran deal, which was a terrible, awful deal, and Barack Obama's kind of bumming about that. Got the release of prisoners and a summit with Kim Jong-un. Do you understand how big a deal that is? Rising approval ratings, despite the fact that 91% of the media is negative coverage. 2 judges have now rebuked Mueller's investigation, and there's more on that coming up on this program today, and making the economy great again. Yes, there's some holes in the economy, but overall, you know, it's doing quite well. It's certainly the 8 dark years of Barack Obama, and this is the new normal, hoping to find a full-time job and your wages going backward. That era has ended, and that's a happy day. Well, this should have been a happy day as well, but of course you have the other side of the issue. You have the Palestinians and the Arabs who hate Israel. And they had to make a statement. They had been gathering in the Gaza Strip for weeks, really, quite honestly. And they amounted to thousands of folks for today's protest. Check it out.
We're seeing heavy clashes, and over the last few hours, we have heard extensive gunfire. We've witnessed some aerial strikes, bombing inside Gaza. And if you can look over my shoulder, there are some of the tens of thousands of people who have gathered up and down this border. And we have also heard from the IDF that there have been numerous attempts to try and breach that fence, coordinated attempts, sometimes by hundreds of people. And the IDF have said they have responded to protect Israel. The IDF also telling us that they have bombed tunnels, which they have found, and that this, if it intensified, they would also bomb inside Gaza. And we've just had confirmation that they have indeed struck a Hamas camp. Now, this was supposed to be a 6-week march, and in fact, tomorrow was the last day of the march. But today, in recognition of that Jerusalem opening, they have decided to go in a big way.
Mm-hmm. What was that thing that was fence, wall? Isn't that something? And it didn't seem like there was anybody on the other side of it. I was told by our Democratic counterparts that that would never work. Gaza, violence, Palestinians, Israelis. We've been singing that song for a very long time. Senator Ted Cruz was actually asked about the violence. He had this to say.
The violence we've seen in response to what happened today, it's sad, because this is simply recognizing an undeniable truth, that Israel is the undivided and Jerusalem is the undivided and eternal capital of Israel. That has been true since 70 years ago today, when Israel, the modern state of Israel, was created, and that was true 3,000 years ago. And the fact that President Trump demonstrated the courage to keep his promise, that is a message heard by our friends and heard by our enemies, that America keeps her words and we stand with the nation of Israel. That's incredibly important.
It is important. It really, really is. And you didn't have that in the past administration. There were a lot of folks who really didn't know where Barack Obama actually stood, whether you were in Syria or whether you were in Israel, for goodness sakes. You didn't know. He was all on board with, Egypt and the Arab Spring, bringing in the Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist organization. And he did cut that pretty sweet deal for Iran, another terrorist state. For some reason, he had this kind of, I don't know if it was a soft spot for him, but he continued to support those. But then on the other hand, he bombed Libya and took over that country. Hey, that guy, Muammar Gaddafi, was a bad dude, but he was keeping the Muslim terrorists and all of that from Europe. He was actually fighting terrorism, so Obama took him out, and now that was replaced with another terrorist organization, ISIS, and many others. So I'm confused on Barack Obama's policies. I'm not confused on Donald Trump's policies, all right? I know where he stands. He wants to get rid of the bad people. Barack Obama seemed to want to reward the bad people. He's standing with Israel. Seems appropriate. Barack Obama did not. And I will duly make this point. A lot of Jewish people in America vote for the Democratic Party. Why? Why? Not one Democrat, not one, made the trip to Israel to celebrate this moment for the Israeli people and Jewish people around the world, quite honestly. So if you're sitting in Florida right now and you happen to be a Jewish individual and you've been voting Democrat, you may want to pause and think about that, because even the Israeli soccer team in Jerusalem changed their name, ladies and gentlemen. This is how historic this is. Yes, the Jerusalem soccer team renamed themselves for Donald Trump. There he is. I don't know how to pronounce the name other than Trump, but he is now a soccer team. It is. I'll tell you what, that's huge. That's huge. So a good day for Israel. I think it's a good day for America, and only time will tell if it will make a difference in the Middle East. It's a terrible place on planet Earth. It's been that way for quite some time. Barack Obama made it quite worse, to be honest with you, and left a mess for Donald Trump, but he's doing his best to clean it up. And when he makes a campaign promise, I got to tell you, you can take it to the bank, it seems. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk a bit about guns. That's back in the news, and it's the same old rhetoric from our Democratic Party. But we'll get you up to speed on why they're talking about it and what you need to look out for when we come back.
Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May Show.
Scary time, right? In America, around the world. As an individual, you have so much information out on the internet, you can't possibly imagine what people know about you. Well, you can check. Did you know that? And I got to tell you something, this is kind of scary, because I'm sure you've Googled your name to find out if anything's come up, but that's nothing. You have no idea. Has someone stolen your identity? What's been published about you? How about maybe someone who has stolen your identity has got a lawsuit, and it's in a court somewhere across the United States? This is why Truth Finders exists, and nobody does it better than they are. They continually expand their database, and every day there's more. I'm talking millions upon millions of public records that they can explore in an instant and give you, I think, the most accurate, complete background check on yourself or anybody else for that matter. If you have not tried Truth Finders, please do it right now. Why don't you go ahead and try it on yourself? I think you'll be blown away to find out just how much everybody knows about you. It's very simple to do. You just go to their website, okay? BigLeaguePolitics.com/TruthFinders. That's BigLeaguePolitics.com/TruthFinders.
It's harder to buy cough medicine than it is to buy an AK-47 or 50 of them.
It is easier for a teenager to buy a Glock than get his hands on a computer or even a book.
It's legal to hunt humans with 15-round, 30-round, even 150-round magazines.
And he was not able to buy a weapon that shoots off 700 rounds in a minute.
Pistols are different. You have to pull the trigger each time. An assault weapon, you basically hold it, goes blah, blah, blah.
No, those are fully automatic weapons.
Okay.
This right here has ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Use these silencers to make them more available, which, as you can imagine,
because the hunters, their ears were hurting.
If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun. Put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house.
If you ban them in the future, the number of these high-capacity magazines is going to decrease dramatically over time because the bullets will have been shot and there won't be any more available.
But some of these bullets, as you saw, have an incendiary device on the tip of it, which is a heat-seeking device. So you don't shoot deer with a bullet that size. If you do, you could cook it at the same time.
That deer deserves to get away. Let's get serious here.
Boom! All right, you can laugh at these people. Those who are gun owners are laughing, right? You're laughing. You go, these are some of the dumbest people assembled on planet Earth. Unfortunately, they're in positions of power, right? Crazy. Oh, yes, and they do go after your cough medicine and your allergy medicine, too, because it'll make us safer. Listen, these are numbskulls, and unfortunately, these numbskulls are writing laws that will curtail your gun use. I got to tell you that, and I think you know this, that ultimately they would like to take all the guns away from every American. My biggest fear is because we have progressive education and has been in place for quite some time now. We're creating a bunch of numbskulls, and at some point in time, we will just freely hand it over. And that would be a terrible thing. And it would also be the end of freedom and liberty in this country, no question about it. You know, here again, Donald Trump, he weighed in on this just the other week. And I'm telling you, this guy is right all the time.
We defend the right to self-defense. Never believe that your Second Amendment is not under siege.
Yes, take that warning. Trump is right. What do you mean you don't believe that? Here's an ad. This is a guy who's running for, I forget what he's running for, but watch the ad.
Fuck the NRA. Their pro-gun policies have resulted in dead children, dead mothers, and dead fathers. I'm Pat Davis, and I approve this message because if Congress won't change our gun laws, we're changing Congress.
How does he dress himself? Does he have somebody who dresses himself? Hopefully no one gave him a driver's license, all right? Well, there's the, again, this is the thing about our progressive friends. They lack knowledge, the ability to obtain knowledge, and to critically think. Clearly, if one were to read the Constitution, old Pat, the NRA, who's responsible for all the gun deaths, it's kind of like blaming the AA, Automobile Association, for all the car deaths. But nonetheless, I ought to read the Constitution because actually going to Congress is the last place you want to go, Pat, because the Constitution prevents anybody in the federal government to do anything about guns, period. I know they have, but it's illegal. Anyway, that's the Democrats. But wait, it's not just the Democrats. It's Republicans, too. In Oklahoma, they had a bill that would be a constitutional bill that would allow anybody the ability to carry a weapon without getting a license and or training because, well, it's a constitutional right. And it passed the Senate and it passed the legislature. A veto-proof, by the way, veto-proof. It was overwhelming. And then it went to the governor, a Republican governor, who is actually not running again. Her last, she'll be able to go home and retire in January. And she vetoes it. She vetoes the constitutional carry law. That would have made Oklahoma the 15th state to actually recognize the Constitution for what it is. So it's not only Democrats, it's Republicans as well. And these are individuals who, for whatever reason, I think it has to do a lot with their education, not to beat a dead horse, but are so uninformed about the Constitution, your rights, and of course what guns really are all about. Hillary Clinton, of course, when she was running for President of the United States, wait a second.
The Australian government, as part of trying to clamp down on the availability of automatic weapons, offered a good price for buying hundreds of thousands of guns. They believed, and I think the evidence supports them, that by offering to buy back those guns, they were able to, curtail the supply and to set a different standard for gun purchases in the future. So I think that's worth considering.
Yeah, I think that's worth considering. The buyback program kind of implies that, well, I don't want to sell my gun. Thank you very much. I'm going to keep it. That's not what happened. It was confiscating your weapon. They went and took it from you. They gave you some money for it, but they took it. Now in Australia, there was something like, depending on who you listen to, somewhere in the order of 650,000 guns to 1.1 million guns they took out of Australia. We have 300 million guns in the United States. So by comparison, of course, you're looking at a greater number of guns. This is a woman who's, again, it's a Democrat, it's Hillary Clinton. She is basically talking to the people like Pat from California and the numbskulls in the first video you saw, who are clueless, and they buy into this stuff and vote for these people. But what she's saying is, we want to take your guns. Senator Feinstein was more clear about it. She actually said, we want to take your guns. But Hillary and the Democrats, of course, are always looking for a backdoor way. Now, here's an Australian senator who actually reveals the truth about that gun control law in Australia.
It made no difference to firearms violence, to gun violence, violence overall. In fact, we had a blip up in general violence after the gun bans. A massive so-called buyback. It was a confiscation with compensation program. Semi-automatic rifles and shotguns and pump-action shotguns were essentially prohibited. It also removed the right to own a gun in any state in Australia for self-defence. We're a nation of victims. You cannot own a gun for self-defence. Doesn't matter what the circumstances, doesn't matter how big the threat, you cannot defend yourself. The criminals still have plenty of guns. There's no shortage of guns. There's a very vigorous black market for guns. So it's really not made the slightest bit of difference. If you want a gun, you can get one. Look at what Australia did. It's a defenceless country these days.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, when you take a look at the stats, gun crimes did go down. Violent crimes went up. In every category. On the mass shootings, they had, well, in fact, let's go back. It was Port Arthur. Isn't Port Arthur the shooting that kind of caused all of this? Let's go take a look at that. Flashback.
John, they are being called the most stringent gun control laws in the world. And that's why perhaps President Obama has drawn attention to them. They were triggered literally by a mass shooting in the Australian resort town of Port Arthur in 1996, in which 35 people were killed. And that led to super strict gun measures, the centerpiece being the ban and the buyback by the government of automatic and semi-automatic weapons. That resulted in something like 1 million guns being turned in. A main force behind the law, then Deputy Prime Minister Tim Fischer. He told us at the time he was hanged in effigy. But right now, it was all worth it. Take a listen.
We may have massacres in the future. You can't rule that out. But the benefits are zero gun massacres for the first 20 years after 1996.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, on every level. And again, this is what's so frustrating. I know our Democratic friends have a different belief. Not all Democrats, of course, but the National Party certainly does. They want to take your guns away. And there's all of these under the guise of making you safer, that it's going to make a difference. Every study, every country that has done this has not resulted. They may have limited mass shootings to an extent. But on the other end, as our violent crime has drastically dropped in the United States, I mean big time, and the number of guns being sold dramatically increased, in places like Australia and the UK and elsewhere where they have very, very tough gun control laws, violent crime shot through the roof for the obvious reasons, because bad people still had guns, still had a way. Or they knew they could go up to the door, and I remember, I think it was a British reporter who was saying this. They said, in London, you basically can go up to the door if you're a big enough guy. You know no one's going to have a gun. You just basically smash them up the head and go in and steal their stuff. And that's what's happening in these gun control cities. Now, maybe that's something that Democrats are okay with. I mean, they're okay with the complete unstoppable flow of illegal aliens who do terrible things in our country as well. And they look the other way. But then again, this was the flashback to Port Arthur. This is what caused it all. This was some 20-some years ago. And then over the weekend, which I think is why the gun issue came back up, this happened.
This well-kept property with its neat gardens and orchards, the scene of one of WA's worst mass killings. Forensic officers swarming the Osmington property, where the gruesome discovery of 7 bodies was made just after 5 o'clock this morning.
I've described it as a tragedy. I don't think any other words can really further describe how tragic this is.
The bodies of 2 adults found outside the house, including one on the veranda. Another adult and 4 children found dead inside a shed that had been converted into living quarters. They'd all been shot.
It appears that a gunshot wounds are there, but I don't want to go further than that, as 2 firearms have been located at the scene.
And evidently it was the grandfather who had been planning this, and he, much like happens here in the United States, killed his entire family, then committed suicide. Unfortunately, it happens. The gun didn't plan this, the father did. The shooter in Florida, the gun didn't plan it, he did. In fact, progressive policies have been the one obstacle to preventing a lot of these gun shootings in America, because they refuse to take people like the Florida shooter and report them to authorities because of some crazy ideas they have of creating a better life for these folks. The bottom line is, understand, as Donald Trump warned last week, the Second Amendment is under siege. And for those of you out there who understand the importance of the Second Amendment, and most people don't, All the other amendments are protected by the Second Amendment. The Constitution is protected by the Second Amendment. It's a pretty big deal. All right, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about a spy story. This spy story is kind of intriguing because it involves, of course, Donald Trump, his campaign, Barack Obama, the FBI, the CIA, British spies, and possibly even the Russians. All to make up a grand scheme and a witch hunt aimed at taking out the president. We'll be back.
Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May Show.
You like spy movies? You like spy novels? You're into that kind of stuff? I know a general who now writes, Tony Theta. He writes, I know him quite well. Successful general, school board superintendent, and then he went to write novels, which are very good, and they're all about spies and the U.S. And I got to tell you something. This is some great material, because it seems the United States government, which at the time was Barack Obama, the FBI, James Comey, CIA, Brennan, and who knows who else, were involved in doing a number of things. Number one, we now know there was a mole planted in the Trump campaign. Now, think about this. I don't know of any other time in history this has happened. Maybe it has. You have a United States President, Barack Obama, using the federal government, weaponizing it to the point, and the people involved here are his people, who put a spy in his political campaign, his opponent's political campaign. Just think about that for a second and watch this at the same time.
It turns out, according to new reports, the FBI may have had a spy in or interacting with the Trump campaign during the 2016 election, a government spy in the campaign. That sounds like a pretty important piece of information, that the Obama administration may have been spying on a rival campaign, you think? But for some reason, we're only just learning about it now. Why is that? Apparently because the FBI and the DOJ deliberately hid that information from Congress. Of course, Congress has authority over the FBI. It's not the other way around, as much as the FBI would like to believe that. So this deception would be gross misconduct at minimum. But of course, gross misconduct would be nothing new in the FBI of Jim Comey. Dan Bongino was a...
Yeah, I'm just, why is this not plastered all over all the news today? Now, we're going to dive into this a little deeper tomorrow so that you have a better understanding of the names. But just that, and this is just part of the story. Part of the story. In fact, Tucker goes to Bongino, who is a former spy guy, a law enforcement officer, and he had this to say, and his reaction, I think, it will be similar to yours.
Yeah, you're right, Tucker. For the sake of the constitutional republic, you pray this story isn't true. There's no partisan advantage for this. Is the very idea of having big R God-given rights has been shredded if, in fact, they can't produce hard evidence of any crime yet, and yet a human intelligence asset may have been inserted in your political rival's campaign. I mean, how this isn't front page news on every newspaper across the globe is stunning. But Tucker, that's not it, though. Keep in mind, Just a couple weeks ago, Devin Nunes on this network in an interview with Maria Bartiromo had another bombshell, that there was no official foreign intelligence through official channels passed into the United States. That was a huge bombshell, because notice what he didn't say. He didn't say it didn't pass through unofficial channels. So we know two things. Potentially that information was laundered through the State Department and potentially the U.S. Senate. And we know there was potentially a human asset in the Trump campaign.
Wow. I mean, seriously, wow. I mean, that is stunning. That's amazing. And no American anywhere should be putting up with that. Of course, our Democratic friends are probably applauding it. This is Barack Obama. The man really ought to be wearing orange today. Never happened, but he ought to. Now, we're going to move along quickly, because that's a story that should catch fire. Should. We'll see if it does. The other part of this is you have James Comey. Of course, he's out on his book tour. And Grassley is not a flame-throwing, like, I love Trump type of guy. He's one of those kind of guys who sits back and kind of takes it all in and wants to weigh in on what's true and what's not. And he's talking about Comey, and he's got an opinion of Comey that I think you probably share.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Question 2 on relatively related.
And he had his suspicions about James Comey, but he held back a little bit.
If I could, I'd like to step back a little bit and say it sounds to me like there's really a conflict here. I don't want to say people are lying, because that's going to be up to the executive branch and the prosecution of people that lie under oath or lie to the FBI. But I do know this. First of all, Wray got rid of McGrath. Also, the Inspector General gave some information to the Office of Professional Responsibility, and both the IG and the Office of Professional Responsibility are very basically non-political people. Like, for instance, the latter has been in that position for 12 years under 2 administrations now. So I think you have to go back to the confidence that we have in those people being non-political to make these judgments, and we better wait until we get the Inspector General's report before I can say people are lying.
Today he's come out and said Comey's lying. But of course you already knew that. You can't turn. No matter where you turn, you feel like you have to take a shower because of the people that are involved here. James Comey, Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Brennan, Hillary Clinton. The list is quite long. All of it to take down a president that was legally elected by you. Amazing stuff. But there's more. And this is one that's going to take some explaining so that you understand who the players are. But also, information has come to light, and it was in the Wall Street Journal as well, that what happened was the FBI took this dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton, and using Steele and his Russian contacts, and you know about the dossier and that it's fraudulent. It hasn't ever been verified by anybody, including all of the news media in the world and our fine FBI, CIA, and what have you. And they used it to get a FISA warrant, and that was so that they could spy. Not only did they have a mole on the inside, they wanted to spy on the campaign, and they got Carter Page. So they got a chance to listen to Carter Page. Now, you may also recall what they did once they got that was they began to unmask everybody. You had people like Susan Rice. You had people who had no business taking that kind of information, but unmasking all the individuals in the conversation, basically seeing exactly what Trump and his team and the people working for him were doing at the same time as they were trying to get Hillary Clinton elected for probably reasons we'll eventually come to understand down the road. What they did is they realized that the dossier was so fraudulent and fake that there's no case to be had there. They had to find another way to keep this going. So what's come to light now is they went with Papadopoulos, who is a guy, he's 24 years old, and you probably have heard his name. Papadopoulos is an up-and-comer. He was trying to work in the campaign, and our government, it seems, set him up and gave him false information about the Russians having Hillary Clinton emails. Their plan, evidently, according to the news story, was to have that gentleman, Papadopoulos, release that information to certain sources. And what they did is they gave him the information, all right? And then another spy offered him a job in London to write a paper. In fact, he stood back and said, I don't understand why you want me to come and write this, but he went. And then they introduced him to the Australian ambassador, who was another operative. And the Australian ambassador took him out, and they had drinks, and that is where he said, and you know, the Russians have Hillary Clinton's emails. He went to American authorities, who then took that information, which they supplied to Papadopoulos. He didn't know it. He never, as an independent source, he has no idea. He was told this by our own government, so that it could reopen the investigation and keep it going. Do you understand? Do you understand what we have in the form of an Obama government entity? And quite honestly, you should be terrified by this, that they're allowed to, if they're allowed to get away with this, and I think they will be allowed to get away with this, because these are too big of players to fall. But this is what the Obama administration has done, and if he could do it, anybody can do it. Now, for Democrats who are, this is great stuff, I remind you that there are other presidents coming. I don't think Donald Trump is the kind of guy who would do that, but what if he were? What if he were to start setting up all the Democrats out there so that you take a fall with fake information, misinformation, manufactured information, witch hunches, which is what you've done to this president in order to take away the vote of the American people. There should be no Democrat ever elected to Washington, D.C. ever again by anybody in this country. There's a lot of Republicans I would throw into that basket as well. This is historical. It's scary. It's tyrannical. And it's nowhere in the news except in select print and media sources. So you're going to have to seek it out. But I don't know. Is this too big a story to keep under wraps? Or am I just too into spy novels? When we come back, something very special. We have our video of the day. I think you're going to like this one. It'll end your Monday in a big way. Stick around.
Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May. It's the Bill of May Show.
You're liking the 3 o'clock slot? I love it. So let's make this our permanent home. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock for sure. I want to end the show with a rather special video. As you know, I'm sure that there's been this meme created again by the prior administration that police officers are awful human beings, particularly the white ones who go out and hunt black people on a nightly basis. This has been the meme for quite some time in America, and because of that, police officers have been demonized all across the country. Many have been assassinated because of that false meme. We have football players kneeling because they believe in the false meme. And of course, you have colleges now teaching this as a part of their studies. So it's something that, although not true, has been taken for the truth and face value, particularly among African Americans who have a certain amount of that. I understand where they're coming from, a certain amount of that because of the history. But here's an 8-year-old girl. She's a little black girl, and she's in Louisiana. And you know how police treat black girls in Louisiana. Well, she's on a mission from God.
8-year-old Rosalind Baldwin is on a mission of love to hug police officers in all 50 states.
I've been waiting for my turn. Yeah. All right.
Rosalind spreading cheer in Ohio, checking off her 27th state. The Louisiana girl says that she was on a call by God to spread love following the deadly police shootings in Dallas.
Yeah, good for her. And that's what it takes sometimes. A child, not a high school student, a child, to actually bring light to something that it should be obvious to everybody. Unfortunately, it's a fight we have to fight each and every day. The media, the liberals, the progressives, and how they demonize just about anybody and everybody they disagree with. That's why we're here, and I hope you'll share this with everyone you know. And then meet us back here tomorrow at 3 o'clock and have yourself a great Monday evening. Ha! Whew, it's over with, right? We're going to be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We'll see you then.
Yes, the entire known media universe is buzzing about the following amazing radio phenomenon.
It's the Bill LeMay. It's the Bill LeMay. It's the Bill LeMay Show.